I always thought coming home would heal me. After the dust, the blood, the nights I spent staring at the stars through the cracked window of an armored truck, I believed that one day, when the uniform came off and the silence of war faded, I'd finally belong somewhere again. But I was wrong. The day my father's message came, the world I had spent years holding together inside me finally cracked open. It was December 17th. Snow was falling outside my apartment in Fayetteville, coating the streets in soft white that looked peaceful from a distance but felt empty up close. I'd been counting down the days to Christmas, my first one home as a civilian. I'd already booked my ticket, wrapped small gifts for Mom and my brother Tyler, and written a card I was proud of, the kind that says, "Everything words can't." Then I opened my phone. One new message from Dad. "Don't bother coming this Christmas. We decided it's best you stay away this year." No explanation. No "how are you?" No "we miss you." Just that one flat sentence that felt like a dismissal, like an HR email severing a relationship that was supposed to be permanent. I remember staring at the screen, waiting for something more to come through. Maybe Mom would text. Maybe Tyler would call. But the phone stayed still, silent, cold, indifferent. The military taught me how to shut off pain, how to focus when the world around you explodes. But that message hit me harder than any blast ever could. It was the kind of wound no medic could patch up. My hands trembled. My chest burned with that awful mix of disbelief and realization, the kind that makes you laugh for a second just to stop yourself from screaming. I typed one word back: "Fine." And I meant it. Not the kind of fine that hides hurt behind a brittle smile. No. This was the final kind of fine, the kind that draws a line in the sand and says, "You don't get another chance to hurt me." I deleted my plane ticket, closed my laptop, poured a glass of red wine, and toasted the empty room. To family, I whispered and drank to the silence. 5 days later, my phone buzzed again, 10 missed calls. One from Mom, one from Tyler, one from Dad, and one from their lawyer. That last one made my heart still, because by then it was too late. Too late to unsay what he'd said. Too late to unwrite the letter I'd already mailed. But before I tell you about that, I have to take you back. Back before the silence, before the text, before everything that led me to that moment when I realized I wasn't my father's daughter anymore. I was 18 when I enlisted. Dad didn't hug me at graduation. He just said, "Try not to embarrass yourself out there." That was his version of love criticism wrapped in dry sarcasm. I didn't join the army to make him proud. I joined because I needed to feel like I mattered to someone, even if it was to my country. Because home never felt safe. Not with the way he looked at me like I was an obligation he never asked for. When I made sergeant, I flew home that Christmas. I still remember stepping off the bus, uniform, crisp boots, polished, heart pounding. I imagined maybe he'd smile this time. Maybe he'd finally say, "You did good, Rachel." But the first thing he said was, "Grab a shovel. The driveway's full." No congratulations, no hug, just work. Mom fluttered behind him, wringing her hands the way she always did, whispering, "Just don't make him angry." My brother Tyler stood off to the side, quiet eyes avoiding mine. He'd learned early that siding with Dad meant peace. So I played the good soldier. I called every birthday, sent flowers on anniversaries, mailed checks when the roof leaked or the car broke down. They never asked where the money came from. Never asked what it cost me. They just cashed it and sent a thumbs up emoji. Sometimes not even that. Still, every year I hoped that maybe one Christmas I'd walk in and they'd be glad to see me. That my seat at the table wouldn't feel like an obligation but a welcome. That my uniform wouldn't be the only reason I was worth inviting. This year I told myself things would be different. I was done with service, done with sand and smoke and silence. I had my discharge papers, a modest pension, and a heart that just wanted peace. I wanted to come home, bake cookies with Mom, hear about Tyler's new job, maybe just maybe get a pat on the back from Dad. But instead I got that text. After the first wave of hurt came a strange, almost eerie calm. It's a feeling soldiers know too well, the moment before you pull the trigger, when everything slows down and sharpens. You don't shake anymore, you just decide. That's when I remembered something buried deep. 5 years ago, during one of my short leaves, Dad had asked me to co-sign a second mortgage. He said it was just paperwork, a technicality. I was 25, exhausted and desperate for approval, so I signed without reading the fine print. For years I forgot about it. Until that night. Until that text cracked open something cold inside me. I went digging through my old military emails looking for a distraction. That's when I found a digital copy of that same mortgage document stamped, signed, witnessed, and legal. I clicked it open, and there it was in black and white. In the event of primary borrower default or voluntary transfer, the cosigner assumes controlling interest over the property until full loan maturity. Controlling interest. I sat back, breath catching in my throat. While my father had been busy cutting me off, he'd forgotten one crucial detail. On paper, I wasn't just his daughter. I was his co-owner. No, I was the majority owner. I laughed not out of joy, but from the absurd poetry of it. The man who told me not to come home was living in a house that legally belonged more to me than to him. So I called a lawyer I knew, a real estate specialist I'd met on base in Tampa. Hypothetically, I asked what happens if a cosigner holds majority interest and the borrower tells her not to come home anymore. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. She can take control of the property, if she wants to. That was all I needed to hear. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. Instead, I wrote a letter, calm, professional, every word deliberate. Effective immediately, I will be exercising my controlling interest as cosigner and legal partial owner of the property located at 12 Windmere Lane. All rights and responsibilities will be enacted through counsel. You will be contacted shortly. I mailed it certified, old school, intentional. I wanted them to open it together to feel it. Then I booked a quiet cabin in the Smoky Mountains. Christmas alone. Snowfall. Firelight. No phone. Peace. For the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone's permission to come home. Because in a way, I already was home. 5 days later, when I turned my phone back on, the missed calls started pouring in. Mom, Tyler, Dad, their lawyer. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering a single one. And when I finally did, it wasn't out of anger. It was out of clarity. Because that Christmas, for the first time ever, I wasn't their daughter begging for love. I was the woman who finally understood her worth. The first call came from Tyler. His name lit up my screen like an old scar, familiar but no longer painful. For a moment I thought about ignoring it. But something inside me, maybe curiosity, made me swipe right. "Rach, what the hell is this?" he blurted, before I could even say hello. "Dad's freaking out. Mom's crying. They got some letter about you taking the house. Are you losing your mind?" I took a slow sip of coffee, watching the snow outside the cabin melt against the window pane. My voice came out steady, maybe too calm. "I'm executing my rights, Tyler. Same way Dad executed his decision to tell me not to come home." "You're seriously going to kick them out over a stupid text?" His voice cracked somewhere between disbelief and guilt. "No," I said. "Not yet." The silence that followed was heavy enough to make the fire in front of me pop louder. He sputtered, "Come on, this is Dad we're talking about. You know how he is." "Yes," I said quietly, "that's exactly why I'm doing this. Because here's the truth. No one tells you about family. The people who hurt you the most often count on you never fighting back. They rely on your silence, your forgiveness, your hunger for scraps of affection. But this time I wasn't starving anymore. I had power, and I was finally willing to use it." The next call was from a man named Harold Wells, their lawyer. His tone was polite, even warm, but there was tension behind it, like someone holding a wolf by the leash. "Miss Monroe," he began, "I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. Your letter arrived rather abruptly and understandably caused a bit of alarm. I think perhaps we can work something out." "There's no misunderstanding, Mr. Wells," I interrupted. "The documents are valid. I've reviewed the terms with my own counsel. I'm invoking control." He hesitated, then tried a different angle. "Well, I'm sure we can find an arrangement that doesn't escalate matters. Perhaps a buyout or reassignment of the note." That's when it hit me. They were scared. Because for all his pride and stubbornness, my father had defaulted again. Missed payments. Probably thought the bank would go easy. But now he was staring down the one person he'd always underestimated: me. "I'm open to discussion," I said slowly. "But my first condition is that he calls me himself. Not through you, not through Tyler. I want to hear his voice." Harold fell silent. He knew exactly what I was doing. It wasn't about the house. It was about acknowledgement, something my father had never once given me. I hung up, set the phone down, and just sat there for a while, listening to the soft crackle of firewood. The cabin smelled like pine and old paper. It was quiet, eerily quiet, but it wasn't loneliness I felt anymore. It was control. They didn't know it yet, but I wasn't playing the soldier daughter they could ignore. I was the landlord now, and Christmas was about to get very, very uncomfortable back home. On Christmas morning, the phone rang again. This time it was Mom. Her voice trembled like wind through dry leaves. Rachel, please don't do this. Your father's furious. He hasn't slept in days. Tyler barely talks to him. Can't we just move past it? I almost laughed. The irony was so thick it hurt. Move past it, Mom. He told me not to come home. Remember? I know she whispered he didn't mean it. I cut her off gently. He said, "Don't bother coming this Christmas. We decided it's best you stay away." That wasn't an accident, that was a decision. Her silence on the line told me everything. I took a deep breath. Do you know what that does to someone, Mom? To come home after years of deployments, after dodging bullets, burying friends, and get a message like that, "I sent you money from war zones." I called every chance I got. "Do you remember what you said the day I came back from Kabul?" She hesitated. I don't. You said, "I'm glad you're safe, but don't talk about that around your father. It makes him anxious." I let the words sink in. I wasn't your daughter, Mom. I was your inconvenience. She started crying soft, helpless sobs that used to make me cave. But not this time. I'd spent too many years mistaking my tolerance for strength. "I'm not doing this out of anger," I said softly. "I'm doing it because I finally realized I'll never be welcomed back unless I bring something to the table. And this time I brought the table." There was no response, only the sound of her trying not to break. What she didn't know was that the wheels were already in motion. I'd filed a notice of possession change through my lawyer 2 days earlier. Delivery was scheduled for that afternoon. And the cherry on top, I'd hired a property management company run by a veteran friend to take over operations. They'd arrive the next morning for inspection, not to evict anyone, not yet, just to remind them who the house really belonged to. That afternoon, I sat by the fireplace wrapped in a thick sweater watching the flames dance. No gifts, no family, no sound of wrapping paper or laughter. But what I did have was peace. And that peace I had earned it with scars, years in silence. I didn't blow up their world out of revenge. I simply reminded them whose name was on the deed. At around 4 that afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was my property manager. "Hey, Rach, we did the walkthrough," he said. "Your folks weren't exactly thrilled to see us, but we kept it civil just like you said." I could almost picture it. My father's jaw tight, Mom hovering in the background, Tyler trying to mediate but failing. "How bad is it?" I asked. He sighed. "Cosmetically, not terrible. Structurally, leaks in the basement, unfinished attic renovation, mold spots under the windows. But get this, 2 of the bedrooms are occupied by tenants, college kids, cash deals, no paper trail." I froze. "They rented out the rooms." "Looks like it. Maybe trying to make mortgage payments. Didn't seem too eager to talk about it." I thanked him and hung up, but my stomach churned. Not from anger, no anger I could handle. This was something deeper, something colder. They had cut me out of the family and then turned my own property into a side hustle. My name was on the loan. My signature kept that house alive. And they'd been collecting rent behind my back while telling me I didn't belong there. That night I drafted a second letter. This one wasn't polite. "Effective January 2nd, you are hereby given formal 30-day notice of management transition and potential termination of residency. Your sublease agreements are illegal. Rent collection is suspended. This property is now under investigation for code violations. All communications through legal counsel only." At the bottom I signed it, Rachel Monroe, Sergeant First Class U.S. Army, retired legal co-owner, 12, Windmere Lane. I sent it to Harold, their lawyer. Then I texted Tyler, "Check your mailbox." Within the hour, the calls started. Pleading, panicked, even one from Dad's number, though I didn't pick up. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need to. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't fight, it's refuse to answer. I poured another glass of wine and sat by the fire, letting the quiet hum of the cabin settle around me. Outside, the snow kept falling soft, endless, clean. They could scream, they could beg, they could call me heartless. But I had survived worse. I'd survived war. And now I'd survived them. January 2nd arrived like a cold slap to the face. The air outside was sharp enough to sting, the kind of winter morning that bites through your gloves and makes your breath visible like smoke from an unspoken truth. The sky hung low and gray, swollen with snow, and I could see my reflection faintly in the frosted window of my truck, steady, unreadable, almost foreign. I hadn't worn my uniform in over a year, but that morning I slipped the old dog tags over my neck. They clinked softly against the collar of my coat like ghosts from another life, reminding me who I'd once been. Not a daughter, not a disappointment, a survivor. When I pulled up to 12 Windmere Lane, my old home, 3 cars cluttered the driveway. 2 of them I didn't recognize, probably the so-called tenants, the college kids renting rooms in the house that bore my name on every official document.